Mahesh, you can start now, I think.
Yeah.
Guests are waiting in the lobby, 74 attendees.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You can start, Mahesh. Yeah.
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 Yeah, good evening all,
and a warm welcome to a webinar on ecological and social impacts of large
dams.
dams.
Today,
Today, we are fortunate to have our chief guest, Nandini Osa, a well-known activist of Narmada Bachao Andolan with us. On behalf of all, I welcome you to this program. Now, I am very happy to invite Dr. Maya Mahajan, who is Associate Professor and Coordinator of our MD Center, to introduce our speaker and moderate the session. So, most of you must be aware that Dr. Maya is working in the field of environment and sustainability from last 25 years. She is also an environmental scientist and activist. She played a key role in bringing farmers, tribals, and fishermen of Dahanu, an ecologically sensitive area, and formed Dahanu Parisar Bachao Samiti, and thermal power plant had to stop further expansion due to Andolan led by her. With the support of local communities, and area is not denotified in spite of pressure from vested interest and considered as ecologically sensitive area. So I invite Dr. Maya Mahajan to lead the session. Also, I welcome all the participants who are attending this session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mahesh. My students and many others, they do not know much about my activism or activist background. So for talking about it, I'm feeling nostalgic. And again, once again, welcome all of you and especially Nandini. Uh, as like you all are aware, and mostly my students from last 1 or 2 weeks, we are talking about sustainable development. What is Bhutan model of development? Today's in Vivas also we were mostly I was asking you this question: what is Dubai model of development? What is Western countries and what is happening in Bhutan? So most of you are aware that though our politicians are telling us that we need growth, progress, development, but what is real development? Can we call only building so many roads and buildings and industries and dams without taking care of environment or without giving proper compensation or without only when this development is only some sector of the society is getting benefited by such development. Only elite class or creamy layer is getting benefited by such development. Can we call that as a sustainable development? When development is happening at the cost of livelihood of the poor people, marginalized people, farmers, tribals, can we call that as a sustainable development? Most of us still we are thinking that what is sustainable development, how we can go or approach sustainable development, what are the impacts of all this industrialization, urbanization, or especially this large dam. So today we have already, before we have already discussed about what is impact of industrialization and urbanization. So today we are going to focus on what is social and ecological impacts or environmental impacts of large dams. And we have a very renowned and well-studied speaker with us, Nandini Oza. Nandini, can you please switch on your video so that people
It's
can
on.
see you?
It's
Video?
on. Am I not? Yeah, my video is on. My speaker is on. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Maybe my setting it is somehow. Okay, no issues.
You're visible.
So, yeah, so Nandini is a hardcore social worker and she is a full-time activist with Narmada Bachao Andolan. Almost 20 years she's working very hard with this Andolan, and she's also president of Oral History Association of India from last 2 years. She's researcher, writer, chronicler and archivist. She has documented and recorded many oral histories of Narmada struggle over a decade, and he has published many books in Marathi and English. When I read Marathi, I was a bit happy. I can read Marathi. Then, yeah. Then her work on oral histories can be visited, or oral histories of Narmada struggle can be visited on her website. And I again welcome Nandini to give us a presentation on what all the impacts of stands based on her own experience. So usually we talk all lots of theoretical things and all, but today we are so happy and privileged to have one activist and writer who has actually worked with these people, who has already studied this problem, and we are going to get direct primary like information from her. Yeah, so I would also request you to ask maximum questions and understand the issue well from this expert. Over to you, Nandini.
Hello everyone. Thank you everyone for being present. Special thanks to Dr. Maya Mahajan for having invited me, and Mangesh ji for all the technical help, and Amrita Vidyapitham for organizing this with anyways. So thank you all. I'm really, it's a privilege to be able to speak with you on this one particular issue, of which I was personally an activist full-time for 12 years. And I've been recording the oral histories and disseminating them of the people affected by this project for several years now. I've been doing it. So I'll be sharing the special case of Sadasur project. One of the reasons is that it is one of the longest anti-dam struggles in the country. Though India, we have witnessed several anti-dam struggles. I'm sure all of you must be knowing that. But my focus will be on the this particular project, the Sardasur project on the river Narmada, being built now. The project dam has been completed. Canal network is still going on the river Narmada in the state of Gujarat, with massive environmental and social impacts in 3 states, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra and Gujarat. But before I start speaking and sharing the experience of the Sardasur project, I would like to share some national level data with you about large dams, developmental projects and displacement and ecological impacts. I hope you're able to see the change of slides and everything.
Yeah, yes.
I guess so. So
Yes.
I would. Oh, okay. So I want to share some data with you before we go to the specifics of the Sardasur project. Although these are very rough estimates, there are no accurate figures available. But this is one figure which was placed at the Lok Sabha Secretariat in 2013, which says in India there have been around 50 million displaced persons in 50 years since independence. 5 crore people have been displaced by developmental projects, and 7 million hectares of forest and 6 million hectares of other common property resources lost in development projects. Most of this, nearly half of them, are because of large dams, then of course mines, national parks, sanctuaries. So this is a very huge number. In fact, it has also been estimated that every decade since 2000, the displacement of people by development projects and loss of common property resources and forests has been at the same pace as in the earlier 50-year period. And therefore, it is very natural, that we have had very powerful struggles against this kind of developmental projects, particularly large dams. And I would like to share a few with you. One of the earliest anti-dam struggle in the country, or possibly even the world, was 100 years ago in the state of Maharashtra, called the Mulshi Satyagraha. It was against a dam being built by the Tata company to provide electricity to the city of Mumbai, in which 52 villages got submerged and displaced. It was a very powerful struggle. Even women were jailed at that time. We often feel that 100 years ago, women did not come out of the house, but there were women who were imprisoned in hard labor. If you all have time, I would recommend that you read the book on the Mulshi Satyagraha by Rajendra Vohra. It was a very powerful struggle. Even third generation today, the people displaced are still fighting for their rights. Then there were very powerful, and there have been very powerful anti-dam movements across the country, some very successful, for example, Koel Karo Dam. For 35 years, the Adivasis to be impacted by the project have managed through their powerful struggle to stop that dam. The photo on the left here you see in the screen, in the struggle, 8 people were shot dead. It was a very powerful movement and they have stalled this dam. I'm sure all of you are aware of the Silent Valley project which was not allowed to be built because of the environmental concerns. There are other successful dam struggles, Ichampalli and Gopalapatnam in Maharashtra. These 2 dams, because of people's struggle, could not be built. Lalpur Dam in Gujarat, there have been powerful struggles on the other dams in the... Sorry. On the Narmada Valley, on other dams, there are several others, but I'm just giving you a few examples here. There are ongoing struggles also right now against dams across Narmada Valley, in Subansiri, in Northeast India, so on and so forth. So these are some of the examples I wanted to share with you. And one particular thing I wish to share is that these mines and these large development projects like mega dams, they permanently destroy the homes and villages of the people forever. They cannot return back, unlike people displaced by other conflicts, like riots or ethnic conflicts. People do hope to return back, or due to some natural calamity, people do hope to return back. But in developmental projects, there is no way people can ever turn back to their homes. They're permanently destroyed. This is a photograph of a mine. And therefore, the struggles are very powerful because people don't know where to go. And often, there is no data of the number of people to be displaced. There is no rehabilitation policy. Mostly in most projects, some cash compensation is given and people are asked to leave. When people resist and demand their rights, they are often met with very severe repression because this kind of displacement, forcible eviction because of development projects, is considered in national interest. While displacement by natural calamity or conflicts is considered a disaster and invites a lot of sympathy, any opposition to this kind of displacement by development projects is considered anti-national, anti-development, and people are met with huge police repression. So some photographs in the Narmada Valley where you see police, confronting the people when they ask for their rights. And often, as there is no rehabilitation plan or policy, people end up either in the slums in the cities or in very, very miserable colonies of this kind. The displaced people are just put there, because the rehabilitation policies are not good. Even if they are good on paper, it doesn't happen physically. So these are some of the photographs of people displaced by dams. And now coming to the Narmada River and one particular project which I said I'll be sharing with you about, the Sardar Sarovar project. But let me tell you that the river Narmada flows through 3 states, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra and Gujarat. And the plan of the government is to build 30 large dams, 135 and 3,000 small dams on the river and in its tributaries. And out of this, there are 2 biggest dams, the Sardar Sarovar project and the Indira Sagar project. And we will be talking about this, one of the 2 largest dams, the Sardar Sarovar project, which is going to be displacing huge number of people. I will be talking about this struggle and this dam and its impacts. So going back to a little bit of history about this one particular project, the Sardar Sarovar, which is one of the largest on the river Narmada. The foundation stone of this project was laid by Pandit Nehru in 1961. And at that time, the dam was much smaller in size. But at that time, the lands of 6 Adivasi villages were acquired for the construction of the project colony. They were never considered project affected, never rehabilitated. They were just merely paid some cash compensation and that's it. Most of them had to then start working on the dam side as construction labor or as domestic help or menial jobs in the colony constructed for the officers and dam builders at Kevadia. I'm sure all of you have heard the name of Kevadia colony, where now the Statue of Unity has come up, the biggest statue in the world. Lot of these lands which are now not required for the Sardar Sarovar project, first acquired for the project, have now been transferred for tourism purposes. So people have been fighting against this particular project and for their rights since 1961 actually. Later on, the work on the dam did not start because the government of Gujarat wanted a much higher dam. There was a dispute between the party states. Finally, the Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal settled the matter and gave a much higher dam on the Narmada. And therefore, there was a huge, massive movement in the state of Madhya Pradesh in 79 called the Nimar Bachao Andolan, because the much larger dam was to displace huge number of villages and forest and agricultural lands in Madhya Pradesh. But after that also, the work on the dam did not start because this, by then in the 80s, environmental concerns were becoming important. It was becoming mandatory for projects of this big, huge, mega size to have environmental studies and clearances. And Sardar Sarovar project was not getting clearances because most of the environmental studies were not done. But by then, in the early 80s, the World Bank got involved in the project. There was a push to start the work on this project. And the work began under our own Ministry of Environment, Government of India, in the mid-80s. And so that was the time, once again, the people to be impacted by this project started coming together, that now the dam seems to be a reality. World Bank has also started giving loan, work on the site had started, and that's when the Narmada Bachao Andolan and people to be impacted from the three states started coming together and started discussing and getting to know some of the main features of this project. For example, this one dam alone is going to displace 245 villages in the submergence area of Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra and Gujarat. 245 villages with a population of 250,000 people to be displaced by the dam alone. Another 250,000 are to be impacted by project infrastructure, which is the canals, the colony in the downstream of the dam, so on and so forth. So people came to know that nearly 5 lakh people are going to be displaced by this single project alone. People also realized that, most of the environmental studies that had to be done for this project were not completed. For example, the flora and fauna studies, because large tracts of forest land, 13,000 hectares of forest was to submerge. So in the Satpura and India mountain ranges, and it was important and felt necessary to do these studies according to the Ministry of Environment, but those studies were not done. The impact on fisheries, by the dams, because a river would turn into a reservoir. So what would be the impact on the fish had to be studies. Those studies were not available. Command area treatment plans had to be ready and studied. Those were not available because where the irrigation was going to be provided, many of the areas were, with black cotton soil, and there is a fear that it would lead to waterlogging and salinization. So these studies had to be done, but not done. And these are all the information by the Ministry of Environment, not by the people, archaeological sites had to be studied, which would be submerged in the Narmada Valley, not done. Catchment area treatment plans had to be ready and studied, not done. Most important for the people of the Narmada Valley to be displaced by this dam was the rehabilitation master plan. When you have 250,000 people being displaced by the dam alone, there had to be a rehabilitation master plan as to where will the people be rehabilitated, can they be rehabilitated, where and how, where is the plan for it. That was not ready. The seismic studies had to be completed. Those were not done because Narmada does fall in the seismic zone. And so what would be the impact of such a large dam on by building it on a seismic zone had to be done, not done. So these were the concerns that the people started feeling, in the Narmada Valley to be displaced directly. And I'll share some of the photographs of what are the kind of areas to be submerged. You can see that out of the 245 villages, there are large number of villages, more than 50%, hilly tribal areas which are going underwater with 100% Adivasi population. Then there are, villages of this kind. These are going to be submerged in Madhya Pradesh, in the plains of Madhya Pradesh, population of 2,000 to 10,000. Very good agricultural and have been impacted already by the dam, the Sardar Sarovar Dam. And so this is one of the early photographs of the meeting of the people to be impacted. People started coming together to discuss what should be done, what are our rights. Nobody has informed us officially that we will be displaced, where will we be rehabilitated, what are our rights, is there a rehabilitation policy. People were just kept in the dark. So this is a photograph of one of the early meetings of the movement. And then people started asking the government the following issues, the early issues by the NBA. The dam where it was being constructed in Gujarat, that whole area around the dam was declared under Official Secrets Act. So people said we have a right to know, particularly the people impacted have a right to know. This is not a defense project, it is a developmental project. Why have you declared this under Official Secrets Act? Give us the data, facts, figures, project reports, so on and so forth. This was one of the earliest demands of the movement. Then the second demand was, where is the rehabilitation master plan? We have a right to know. Show it to us. Where are the environmental studies and environment clearances? Show it to us. Has the cost benefit analysis of this project been done? If so, show it to us. Share it with us. Very important question that the movement began to ask very early on was that we want to know who is going to benefit by this project and who is going to pay the price for this project. Tell us, is this water of this dam, as you say, really going to the drought-prone areas of Gujarat? Show us the plan. A very important concern with the movements raised was, are alternatives which are sustainable, which are not so ecologically devastating, examined? Have you done any sort of research on we could have smaller dams or decentralized water management before planning this dam? If so, show it to us. And therefore the demand of the Narmada Bachao Andolan, the powerful movement of the people in the Narmada Valley was, let us have a time-bound review of this project, the Sardar Sarovar project, with people's participation, because the decision was of building this dam was taken somewhere else. The people to be impacted were never consulted, never told anything. So it was a very reasonable demand that the people impacted by this project, and there were not 10, 15 or 20 villages, 250 villages. They said, let us have a time-bound review of the project with people's participation. A very, very reasonable demand, but the government was not willing to listen to it. I would like to share the other concerns that the people in the Narmada Valley began to start sharing, early on itself. I will share with you a voice of a very senior leader of the movement. She is a farmer herself. Her village is in the submergence area. She will speak in Nimadi, and the translation as subtitle is in English. So these were the concerns that people started raising early on in the movement. I'll share her voice with you. It's a short clip.
મારા દિમાગમાં એક જ આવે દિમાગમાં કે આજ આપણી સંસ્કૃતિ ખતમ હોઈ જાયગા, આપણી આવડાવાળી પેઢી ખતમ હોઈ જાયગા. આજ જો કદી નર્મદામાં બાંધ સરદાર સરોવર બની રહ્યો, વિનાશકારી બાંધ છે. એકાસે કદી કદી જમીન બચતી હોય या पूरी पर्यावरण अपने घाटी की बचती हो, अपनी पूरी घाटी को नाम निशान नहीं रहेगा. पर्यावरण खत्म हो रहा, घाटी को नाम निशान नहीं बचतो है, कहीं बची रहो. यहाँ देखा तो मैसूर को बांध, वही देखा तो ओंकारेश्वर को बांध, पूरी नर्मदा का नष्ट करना चाहिए सरकार को. देश को विकास ऐसा होता है. नदी न खुला आम बहना देव, नदी आजाद है, प्रकृति की देन है. वन कटाई एक तरफ से कह रहा है वन कटाई रोको, दूसरी तरफ से पूरा बर्बाद कर दे, पूरी झाड़ी नष्ट कर दे, सुल्पाने से नष्ट कर रहे हैं ये लोग। सब निर्णय दिल्ली बम्बई से लेवा। ये प्रकृति के साथ में लोग खिलवाड़ कर, अच्छी बात नहीं मिला है। बोले हम तो कि हम नहीं हटेंगे, रहने दो, सब नदियों को बहने दो, माँ नर्मदा को बहने दो, सब नदियों को बहने दो, पूरी नदियां, देश की जितनी नदियां हैं सब न को बहने दो।
So very important issues began to be raised by the people in the Narmada Valley. Women have been at the forefront of the struggle. Who else but women would know how important it is to remain free flowing, free, not bound. So let the rivers flow. We need to examine alternatives. Where are the decisions taken? They are taken in Delhi, Bombay. We are not being, the people who are living on the banks of the rivers, on common property resources, are never consulted on the issues of development. So let us sit and have a time-bound review. So as I said, 250 villages with 250 lakh people to be displaced. Women have been at the forefront because when common property resources are lost, grazing lands, forests, agricultural lands, fish, women are to be impacted very seriously. And so in the Narmada Bachao Andolan, women have been in the forefront in leadership roles. The struggle was not limited to a government itself, against the government itself, but also the Narmada Bachao Andolan with like-minded people started questioning the involvement of the World Bank, international financial institution like the World Bank, which began funding this dam even before our own Ministry of Environment. India had given some history of involvement in this project, the Sardar Sorovar project, and finally had to withdraw from the project it was funding. That has happened for the first time in the history of the World Bank, and that was
so software
people the whole movement, was not a 1 or 2 or 10 or 15 villages, but programs were taken up to show that this is a mass resistance. It is important that people are taken into confidence before this dam is built. There has to be a review. So this is a mass show of strength. I just wish to share with you some photographs to give you an idea of how powerful the movement has been. The government would not listen to the people, and therefore, the dam continued to go up, and therefore the people in the Narmada Valley decided that we will fight. Koi nahi hatega, bandh nahi banega was a slogan. Even if you will drown our villages, we'll keep standing in the water. And that's when the government started submerging villages one after the other. If people did not move out, they were dragged out by the police. The resistance became very powerful. The matter went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court did consider some of the issues raised by the movement, and for 6 years in the 2000, from I think 2000, in the 90s, the work on the dam stopped for nearly 5 to 6 years when the people did get some respite. So you can see that this is the level of impact. But then in 2000, the Supreme Court lifted the stay on the project, and slowly the villages began to go underwater. And mostly the rehabilitation fell far short of what the policies laid down in the government records. So you can see that the struggle goes on even when the villages began to submerge. 245 villages have been impacted severely, submerged severely, lost in the dam permanently. It's not just the villages and agricultural lands, but 13,000 hectares of forest got submerged in this one dam alone. And another 4,500 hectares of forest land in Maharashtra was cleared, to rehabilitate the people displaced by the dam. And there again, there were Adivasis dependent on that forest who were evicted and pushed out to make room for the Narmada ousties. There too, there was resistance in which, a very old Adivasi lady died in police firing. So there was a whole issue of secondary displacement So forests lost in the submergence of the dam, 4,500 hectares in Maharashtra cleared to make room and resettlement of the Narmada Austies. So the impact on the forest has been huge. Wish to share with you some of the photographs of the forest loss, the ecology loss, flora, fauna, the impact on flora, fauna, and no studies, by the way, have been done on the trees to be lost, medicinal plants to be lost, fruits to be lost, minor forests produced that brought a lot of income to the people lost. No studies have been done. No, only preliminary studies have been done. Whatever little studies that were done by the Narmada Bachao Andolan, one of the studies said that in 26 villages we found 54 varieties of trees, 25 varieties of fruits, minor forest produced medicinal plants and herbs. These studies had to be done by the government of India, not done. Very rich forest has gone into the submergence area of the Sardar Sarovar project. Unique type of wood and minor forest produced. Some photographs I'm showing you here, that some wood was so good, termite resistance, water resistance. So these kind of very rich forest has been submerged in the Sardar Sarovar project. It's not just the agricultural lands, villages and forests that has been lost, but the river Narmada is a very historically religious river for all. I mean, you will find temples, you will find mosques, you will find even Jain derasars, and I will just share with you some photographs of the historical temples that have drowned in the Sardar Sarovar project. These are only two photographs of the Shulpaneshwar and Hapeshwar temples, very important, historically important temples. No rehabilitation, no relocation, not even studies were done, of how the artifacts in the temple, the idols in the temple, no documentation, and there are hundreds of such temples that have drowned in the Sardar Sarovar project, one dam alone, and no documentation of this at all. Many other historical sites and religious places have drowned in the Sardar Sarovar project. For example, that is the Koteshwar Ghat on the left, that has also drowned. Other temples, particularly the Adivasi religious sites, cannot even be relocated because often they are, environmentally, ecologically very rich sites that can't be even relocated and considered very sacred by the Adivasis, have all drowned in the Sardar Sarovar project. And I wish to share the voice of a very senior Adivasi leader. She is unfortunately no more, Pervi Bai. How the river itself has been impacted by the dam. She will share in her voice. Pauri, I have translated, sorry, Bilali. She will, the translation is in the subtitles in English. She says that once the dam was built, even the living things within the river, like crocodiles and all, have been impacted very severely. Their behavior has changed. They never used to attack human beings or cattle, domestic cattle, but after the building of the dam, their whole nature has changed, and how the dam has impacted the river itself, I would like to share it with you in her voice. I'll play it. It's a short clip. Her own village, Jalsindi, is in the submergence area. It has drowned in the Sardar Sarovar dam waters. I'll share the clip with you.
तेर बुकड़ा नेक बुला पिन पाड़ी ले दी पानी पीने गई तो ली फंसी गई तीने गोरी मर गई एक गाय भी फंसी मर पेट में बचो तो ये भी मर गई 60 बुकड़ी थी तीने में 4-5 एक बुकड़ी थी मुंगरू खाई खाई मिटर पेला मुनी देखते ला काई नहीं कोई ता पड़े तो माल भी हुके तो मान है हुके तो बीता जाए ना उनको ये सेला सुरा भी हासोने काठी से हमरो खेती डूब गईली वादेन कांदे खुदला हमरो जंगल बाह से जंगल का ई बाह कोये नोन का आय कोई हमरी परिणाम जीवरेला जंगल उजाड़ी काटी कुटी उजाड़ी देवे दाना देव झाड़ बीड़ गाठाड़ी एने वागोल रिछो गाठाड़ी सिरकार का होतेरी मोटी लांड मिलतो इते लांडी बात छे ने ते तेरो मुंड रुक ले दलो मुंडो गोले फांदा गईते आफरू निकोंगी ने ओतरे आंबो तेरा मूड रुकाई गई ते आप रोहे जाऊंगी नहीं तो पेट को लिखा दी वही तो तू कौन देखे तू तो जाड़ जुइन बंद कर देनी ते जाई कहाँ तेरा पेट में कोतरो से कोतरो मरिया ने कोतरो कहीं आज जो मरतो आज मान है भी मरने वाली.
So you can see how people have seen the impact of the dam. A dam on a river, it's like choking the river. The people consider the river a living thing because there's so many living things in her belly, and all of that dies, is what Pervi says, by building a dam, because the whole ecology changes. So this is Pervi, and this is a photograph of the same spot, of the river before it was built and after it was built. So the whole river is turned into a dead carcass, is what Pervi says, and it is really true. The river gets polluted, the water is stagnated, the whole ecology changes, and with this there is a huge impact on all the living things within the river in her belly. The photo earlier, what you saw was of the reservoir, how a river turns into a reservoir, but this is of the downstream of the Sardar Sarovar Dam, where the river, which was once flowing perennially, has now gone dry for nearly 7 to 8 months in a year, suddenly gone dry for 7 to 8 months in a year, because all the water is stopped in the dams built on the river Narmada. And so a 110-kilometer stretch of Narmada in Gujarat below the Sardar Sarovar Dam has gone dry for 7 to 8 months in a year, every year, and just during monsoon we see waters flowing. So there are cities like Bharuch and Ankleshwar that were dependent on the Narmada waters that have been severely impacted. There were 10,000 fishing families that were dependent here for their livelihood on the river Narmada in the downstream, who have lost their livelihood because sudden release of water, sudden stoppage of water has changed entirely the ecology in the downstream of the dam. And I wish to share the voice of a very senior leader. Unfortunately, he also passed away very recently. His village is also in the submergence area, Sitaram Bhai. What he thinks of a river, of the Narmada river, I just wish to share his voice. He speaks in Hindi. The translation is in English.
पूरे भारत में एक नर्मदा ऐसी मात्र नदी एक जहाँ से निकलती है वो डायरेक्ट लोटा भर के पानी पियो, जहाँ तक मिलती है वहाँ भी लोटा भर के पानी पियो, ऐसी नदी भारत में एक भी नहीं है, एक भी नदी ऐसी नहीं है कि अंत तक पानी इतना शुद्ध साफ सुथरा, क्योंकि बहती थी। नदियाँ जो बहती है ना, पहाड़ों से टकराती है, पत्थरों से टकराती है, तो उसमें अपने आप में फिल्टर है। ऊपर से गिरेगी, पत्थरों से टकरा के कल जो शब्द है ना, वो फिल्टर है। अब वो उनका जो गति बहाव की तो देगा, फिल्टर कहाँ थे वो तो गंदा होना ही। नर्मदा जो बहती है, टकराती है पत्थरों से, वो ऊपर से झरने गिरते हैं, वो फिल्टर हो जाते हैं। और वही कारण था कि नर्मदा में नीचे से ऊपर तक पानी पियो, शुद्ध पानी।
So the obstruction by dams, pollutes the river and the reservoir. The river in the downstream goes dry. The entire river of 1300 kilometers has been disrupted, is what Sitaram Bhai wishes to say. And this has really impacted most of all the fish life also, along with people and forest. In fact, there is a study by Central Inland Fisheries Research Institute that says the Hilsha catch alone has reduced by 90% in a decade, from 5,180 metric tons to 419 metric tons. In fact, we did a small study in a 100-kilometer stretch of Narmada and found 48 varieties of indigenous species, all have been severely impacted because the whole ecology has changed from free-flowing freshwater river to a reservoir, and in downstream again dry for many months in a year. On one hand, we have the downstream impact where the river is dry for 7-8 months, but sometimes the waters are suddenly released in the monsoon when there is heavy rain and the dam is filled to the brim. And so we have often found that the downstream areas get flooded. This is happening increasingly in the downstream of dams across the country, and it's a very serious matter of concern. Similarly, scientists have also been raising the seismic impact. Reservoir induced seismicity is increasingly being found in dam areas, and scientists have been flagging that reservoirs actually lead to more seismic activities, and this is a point of concern which I wanted to share with all of you here. One of the things that we generally ignore is that we see all the impacts, ecological, social impacts above the land, but rivers particularly are very ancient river valley civilizations, have very important archaeological and other things under the ground on the banks which permanently get destroyed by these kinds of projects. I'll share, this is the final clip here of audio clip here of a senior member of the Narmada Bachao Andolan. He himself is an oustie. His village Chikhalda was a very important archaeological site. We do not even study all these impacts in big dams. So I will share this clip with you. He speaks in Hindi and the translation is in English.
लगता है कि नर्मदा घाटी काफ़ी पुरानी ह्यूमन सेटलमेंट रही है। तो डॉक्टर एस.डी. ओटा जो आर्कियोलॉजिकल सर्वे ऑफ इंडिया का, उन्होंने काफ़ी गहन काम किया है। जो इलाका है बड़ा इलाका, यह लगभग सारा ही इलाका सरदार सरोवर की डूब वाला इलाका है। उन्होंने सरदार सरोवर की डूब में के इलाके में घूम के करीब 94 एंशियंट माउंट ढूंढे, और यहाँ जो प्रमाण मिले हैं उनके खुदाई में, वो काफ़ी मतलब इस तरीके के कि देश में कुछ कुछ तो पहली बार मिले हैं। जैसे खापरखेड़ा में लकड़ी की मोहर मिली है, सबसे पुरानी, देश की सबसे पुरानी लकड़ी की मोहर खापरखेड़ा में मिली है। खापरखेड़ा में दूसरा फिर ये मिला है कि लोहा गलाने की भट्टी मिली है। अब पिपरी में हम देखते हैं तो पिट ड्वेलर्स के साथ कई तरह के प्रेसियस स्टोन मिले हैं। कार्नेलियन मिला है, लेपिस लाजुली मिला है। तो डॉक्टर ओटा का जो काम है वो सरदार सरोवर के क्षेत्र में इस तरीके के जानकारियाँ मिली है जो कहीं मिलती नहीं। जैसा सरकार शायद इसलिए डरी कि और यदि कुछ डिटेल्ड यहाँ पर अध्ययन यदि करवाया तो शायद ऐसी चीज़ें मिल जाए जो देश में पहली बार कहीं मिलती है, तो फिर और भी अध्ययन की ज़रूरत होगी, और भी अध्ययन की ज़रूरत होगी मतलब फिर सरदार सरोवर को रोकना पड़ेगा। इसलिए नावड़ा खेड़ी का जो काम है वो रुकवाया। अचानक काम चल रहा था और उस समय रुकवाया, तो लेकिन दुर्भाग्य से वो फिर सरकार ने आगे बढ़ने नहीं दिया, दुनिया के सामने सच्चाई आने।
So we talk of one Ram temple in Ayodhya, but this rich heritage of ours, archaeological, religious temples, other religious sites have not even been studied. In fact, the Archaeological Survey of India wanted that all the studies at least been completed, but they were not allowed to proceed with their work. So so many of you will wonder, that what was the outcome of a movement like this if all of this has been lost. So I will quickly share with you some of the important achievements of the movement. One of the very important achievements I've already shared with you, that the World Bank had to withdraw from a project it was funded. First time in the history of the World Bank. There was a call for moratorium on World Bank funding of large dams in '94, which was named Manibali Declaration, signed by 250 organizations across 40 countries. Manibali was one of the villages that fought very strongly against the Sardar Sarovar project. So in its, in tribute to Manibali, the declaration has been known as Manibali Declaration. World Commission on Dam was set up to study the impacts of large dams and examine the alternatives in 1998. Supreme Court did stay the construction on the dam between 95 to 2000, and due to environment and rehabilitation concerns, the Supreme Court, when it gave a go-ahead also, there was a split minority judgment which says that there are environmental concerns that need to be examined and construction cannot go further. Even the majority judgment said that the construction can go further only after proper rehabilitation. I must also share with you that because of the people's movement, the Narmada Bachao Andolan, there is a better rehabilitation and compensation compared to the other projects of this kind by dams and mines. The rehabilitation of people and compensation is slightly better. And very important thing which I feel is that the struggle is still on. People are still fighting for their rights. So these are some of the achievements. And there are general achievements also by movements like this across the country, and they've helped to bring about changes in policies and laws. For example, there is now the Right to Information Act. We have the Land Acquisition Act 1894 to now we have at least some right to rehabilitation. Land acquisition in 2013 has given rights for rehabilitation to people. We have the Forest Rights Act in 2006. All these changes have come because of powerful movements across the country. Environmental clearances have been mandated, since 94 for projects of this kind. And there have been changes in institutions of regulations and governance. We have the World Bank Inspection Panel now. We have the National Green Tribunal now, where people affected by these kinds of projects can approach, for the injustice done. And for us, there are lessons that, we must look into not just the carbon footprint or just talk about climate change in the terms of carbon footprint, but we must, while planning projects, developmental projects, is very important to examine and see that the social impacts are small, cultural impacts are small, archaeological smaller footprints, economically smaller footprints, and ecologically smaller footprints, not just carbon footprints. These are the lessons from movements like the Narmada Bachao Andolan, because increasingly there is a push by developmental planners that instead of carbon-based power generation, we must have green source of energy, and big dams are considered to be green source of energy. But these kinds of movements question, that are such mega dams really green source of energy? We must have an holistic approach. There cannot be just carbon footprint, but entire ecological, social, cultural footprint needs to be small. And the final slide here, I want to just share with you some quotes which I'm sure you can reflect and think on after the presentation is over. Movements like the Narmada Bachao Andolan and that have gone on across the country have raised questions before the present development paradigm. One of the quotes I want to share is of one of the leaders of Mulshi Satyagrah, Vinayak Biskute, who wrote in his book in 1941, by submerging the lands of the farmers, capitalists like the Tatas needed both electricity and labor. And it was against this capitalist class that the farmers of Mulshi started a rebellion. Mona Bhan, a cultural anthropologist from Kishanganga Dam, says there were concerns as to how dams were being weaponized and used as a way to ensure the extermination of people from that landscape. Things like sand and gravel are not apolitical, but materials that hold political ideologies in place. So actually environment, ecology, the kind of development must be looked not just in environment or carbon footprint or ecological concerns, but these are all very major political issues that we must look into. And finally, I urge you all here, as you are all environmentalists, that one objective of NVIS is set up by Ministry of Environment is to disseminate scientific technical information on various issues related to biological invasion, invasive alien species. So I appeal to you to examine what is the impact of cement, iron and concrete mega dams as invasive alien species for a river and common property resources. I'm sure you will all reflect on it, discuss on it, read on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nandini. That was such a brilliant and informative presentation. And thanks again for making all of us and our audience to make understand that this cannot be considered as a sustainable development where few people are getting benefited at the cost of environment and so many poor people. And I before opening up this session for question and answer, I wanted to ask one question, that whether any study or anybody has done study of cost benefit analysis of this dams, whether these environmental and social costs are taken into consideration when doing this cost benefit analysis.
Actually, there are no such comprehensive studies dealing with all aspects, but there are studies dealing with different aspects. And if you are interested in environment and social aspects, the book I would really recommend is the Morse Commission report, which was commissioned by the World Bank to review this project. It's a excellent study, and I think all of your students should read it, because it's an in-depth study on the environment and displacement aspect of this project. Because you mostly are dealing with environmental issues, you will have a comprehensive information in this one report. So if you can get it, it will be very important to study.
Thanks. Because like I was wondering, even after World Bank has stopped funding, how come our judiciary and government has given go ahead to such project? And this, my intention of organizing this lecture was to generate awareness among students and like, because they are like citizens, future generation of our country. So at least in future, this kind of projects which our politicians or our leaders, they are misguiding us and telling this is what is development, can be stopped. So I want you all people to ask
A very important
maximum.
question. Actually, yes.
Ah,
So yeah, in fact, the Supreme Court had stayed the work of this project for 5 to 6 years, and
yeah,
out of three judges, one judge, the minority judgment was very clear. In fact, that also you can read the minority judgment. Very strongly on environmental displacement issues it had come forth, but two members versus one.
yeah,
So it
right.
was, yeah. Very powerful forces are involved in this kind of development project, huge contracts, international financial institutions. So there is a big vested interest, very, very
Right,
big vested.
right. And even the people who were supposed to get this benefit out of, like of dam, like irrigation, or I guess they also have not received, and some corporates and golf and some other industries have got more benefit than the people who were supposed to get benefited.
Very important question, because this whole project was justified on the grounds that it will permanently solve the drought prone areas problem of Gujarat, Kutch, Saurashtra and North Gujarat. And in fact, the initial plans and the official plans very clearly said that these waters will not be given to powerful cities like Ahmedabad, Baroda, but the plans have been changed. The Sabarmati riverfront, which is very, was not supposed to, according to the official plans, was not supposed to get Narmada waters. But these waters have been taken there. If you will see the official plans, even Kutch and Saurashtra, were going to get very small percentage of the irrigation benefit. Even those have not reached. Canals have not been completed. Waters have been diverted to places which were not in the original plan. So yes, it's all a very important concern you have raised. In fact, I will share with you some information which you can take up in your class later on, as to, of the ex-Chief Minister of Gujarat. He has flagged all of these concerns. So I'll share it with you. You can discuss it later on in your class. Yes.
Sure. Now session is open for question and answers. You can also unmute and ask.
Yeah, hello, ma'am. Good evening.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, ma'am, thanks for a very illustrative presentation. I was wondering about how do you see a progress of Narmada Bachao Andolan in terms of current political scenario where there are legislation like Land Acquisition and Rehabilitation Act, but the challenge is still there is amendment happened in 2015 also. Then how do you see that in congruence of 2006 law, which is FRA has been implemented? So the conflict is still going on ground, and people are not getting their justice, like either in terms of rehabilitation or in terms of land rights.
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, the struggle is still on because we have very good rehabilitation policies on paper. In fact, the Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal has set out with a very good rehabilitation policy, but rehabilitation has not been done accordingly. The law says that it has to be a land-based rehabilitation, but people have been, instead of given land, given cash. So the dispute is still on. People are still struggling. But let me tell you that compared to other dams, the situation is much better of the displaced people. Though not at all according to the policies and laws, people have turned into wage labor. The very important and serious concern is of the people who have not been considered project affected at all and have no rehabilitation policies, like those impacted by the infrastructure, those impacted in the downstream. 10,000 fishing families, they have not even been considered as impacted. So it's a very major issue. And I must say that while the movement has been very strong, I mean, it's a major challenge to really fight on all this, because people are also scattered, spread over three states. So they do not have the power to influence any one constituency. So that's where, the people, sometimes dam is in only one state, it becomes easier for people to challenge. But because this has impacted in three states, it has been a challenge for the people of the Narmada Valley. But people are still fighting. But it is a major challenge for NBA also, all these considerations. A long way to go, long way to go. I feel like in Mulshi Satyagraha, 100 years down the line, people are still fighting. I hope people in the Narmada Valley don't have to fight for 100 years, but once displaced, it's like never ending struggle. That's my experience. You have to keep fighting.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Can I ask my question? Yeah, I'm Dr.
Yes,
S.K. Wadawat.
okay.
It was a very, very educative presentation.
Thank
Excellent
you.
data backing. My compliments to you. But my
Thank you.
question is, have you people also thought about the alternative sources of energy? Because we all want supply of energy for our
Yes.
normal day-to-day living. We all want very good facilities. We all want good standards of living, whether it's in villages or in urban areas. People of India are also living in urban areas. So if some developmental activities are happening like this, where water management is also one of the major considerations, why we see so much of andolans and struggles? Yes, there are certain shortcomings in the policy formulation or maybe implementation of those formations. But then we also have a right to have a good standard of living. Have you ever thought about these alternative sources of the supply of water and energy to urban areas?
I'm very happy you raised this question, and this concern. So we should start by how much water do we really have in the country, and who is consuming how much? Are we going to be able to meet the demand of, the ever-growing demand, like Pune city has so much water per capita compared to the rural areas. So we will have to do first an audit of how much do we have, how much do we, how much and for what can we prioritize. So it will have to start by first prioritizing, first to meet the drinking water needs, cattle needs, protective irrigation needs. What we are doing is just the reverse. First, start with the luxurious needs, and just give as much water as certain powerful sections of people need. So we will have to start with, we have enough for everybody's need, but not for greed. And the movements like the Narmada Bachao Andolan have been insisting and telling the government, let us sit and examine the alternatives. There are alternatives. They have been implemented. They are sustainable. Why are you not examining them with the people affected by the project? They are cheaper alternatives. They will reach water to the needy. So it would be wrong to say that there are no alternatives. It's wrong to say that movements like the NBA have not placed those alternatives. It's wrong to say that the scientific and other communities have not examined those. It's just that the government is not interested. We will have to do an audit of what resources we have, how do we want to use that. We have to begin with that. Otherwise, on one hand, we are seeing the kind of climate change, the environment degradation, the kind of movements and unrest. So it would be sad to say that alternatives have not been existed. They are there. They are with the government also. In fact, the government itself says we need to do sustainable development.
Yeah. See, again, to carry it forward, can I make a few more observations? Because you are, of course, the topic itself was like that. You have listed number of negative impacts of this kind of growth or development, within brackets development. Okay. But then if you think the movement was so widespread and there was so much of public sympathy with it, could you not influence the intellectuals and the university academics and all that to come forward to do all those kinds of researches? Why do we always expect government to do it? What is government? It is democracy. It is we people only. So instead of just blocking the things, I think the better mode would have been to influence the academics also to come forward and generate some good reliable data. Simply cashing on the emotions of the people. Yes, I understand displaced people, the project affected people are really very badly treated. There have to be ways to solve those solutions. We should be more solution oriented, because all these developments are also having sustainable impacts, which you are not listing here. It has got many positive impacts. Yes, I agree. Small dams would have been a definite preference. But how about the cost benefit?
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. But let me say that I started with the onset itself. I said the demand of the people was that these projects were designed way back in the 60s and 70s. Lot more data, information, studies have come forth. Let us therefore stop the project for a time-bound review with people's participation, where you would have technocrats, experts, intellectuals, people who are affected, and the government sit across a table and discuss. Why can't you halt the project for 1 year and let us re-examine all of these issues? Let us see if there are no alternatives. This was the only demand that the movement put forward, but the government just did not want to entertain. They said, Ek Baar Tribunal Award has given, that's final. We will not examine anything. It's sacred. The government just did not want to do any review. Time-bound review.
Supreme Court also, I think.
And there were, 1 minute, let me finish now. You asked your question. And there were scientists, technocrats, archaeologists, everybody were willing to sit and, across the table with the government to examine each and every aspect. But the government said, no, we will just send police and evict you. We will drown your villages. We won't entertain your democratic demand of a review, a time-bound review. All that the people were asking, that these projects were designed way back in 60s and 70s. There is more data available. Let us sit and talk. Maybe we are wrong. Maybe we are wrong. Let us do that, at least, that exercise. But that was that the government is never willing to do.
No, even now I think there is a time to do it. At least we must have the data.
Of course, we must. For the newer projects, we have these public hearings. You know how they take place. No data is given to the people. So we must sit across and review all these projects. I'm sure the intellectual scientists and environmental community, experts are willing to give their time. but the government is not willing to examine any of these things, not willing to
Very
discuss.
true.
Okay,
Very
thank
true.
you. Thank you very much, Professor Nandini. Thank you. It was a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank
In fact, environmental clearance process is getting diluted in our country. Sir, you are talking about
Absolutely.
democracy, but how much awareness is there in general public about all these environmental issues? How many political parties are showing that what kind of agenda they have about protection of environment, and how much awareness is there among general public? Here in Tamil Nadu, I'm from Coimbatore now talking. Here, Tamil Nadu people give vote based on how much liquor bottles they receive and saris they receive. So total system actually is a faulty. So you can't say that just because like only people can do. Yes, definitely people have got lots of power, but unless government support such initiatives or they take strong stand, only people can't change anything.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Fully agree with you. Sure.
And at least the directly affected people need to be taken into confidence. They need to be given all the reports, data. They have a right to consult their own scientists, technocrats, and a review, a open, time-bound public review. What harm is there in that? There's no harm, but it doesn't take place.
I just want to share a very small experience of mine. Like in Dahanu, we were getting Supreme Court orders favorable of like no removing that plant from that, stopping the operation or license of that thermal power plant for 17 years. But nothing happened. Only when people realized, when their pockets were hit, when the sapota production, mango production had gone down because of thermal power plant, they started supporting us like activists, and then that expansion of thermal power plant was stopped. So public support is important, but for that it took 17 years to generate awareness, and public came on the ground only when their pockets were hit. So here also the people who are suffering are united, but those who are not suffering, they are enjoying, they are not bothered about what is happening to marginal community. Suppose, sir, if your land is affected by that dam or something, only you would talk. When we are sitting in a very comfortable position, we are getting water, we are getting electricity, we are least bothered about poor people's livelihood. So the
Sure.
only development of one certain community or one creamy layer of the society or industries or middlemen at the cost of poor people whose livelihood is dependent on that. How can you justify this? Just because they can't speak, they are voiceless because they are poor. What kind of development is this?
And sadly,
Where
we
only
do
one
have.
Hello?
And sadly, we do have very sustainable alternatives. We do have, which can
Right,
really.
right, right, right. There are so many other alternatives. Huge forest is going under dams. So many agricultural fertile land is going under that water. And now universally it is accepted that large dams are going to cause environmental and social problems.
Yes, this is now
Any
no
other
longer the
question?
concern, no longer the concern of the displaced people. It's like
Yeah.
the climate change and the whole debate, has brought to the fore that everybody is going to be hit by this development, aggressive development. We have to look into, sustainable alternatives for our sakes, who are the beneficiaries actually of these projects. It's going to hit us
Yeah.
also.
Somebody's raising hand. I think some Ashwin, some student. Please unmute and talk, Ashwin.
Abhinav Chavli was raised.
Abhinav, please unmute and talk, please.
Yes, ma'am. I've seen there is an alternative like underground dam for these large dams, ma'am. It's like I don't know if it is practically possible or is it constructed. I wanted to ask, is there any underground dam in India which is being constructed? I've seen that was a suggestion which was given by an IISc professor, Dr. Sitaramam. Like I've seen on the internet. So, are there any underground dams constructed? That was an alternative which was given by an IISc professor.
No, I don't know. I'm sorry. On the Narmada, I don't know of any myself. I may be wrong because your question, I mean, because the Narmada itself is 1300 km long, but several alternatives have been shared by people. One of them was of a much smaller dam, 110 feet high dam. There have been alternative proposed. In fact, even we were saying that start by the 3000 smaller dams, very small dams, which is there in the government plan. Instead of the two large dams to start first, start from, conserving rain and soil in the Narmada Valley, in the catchment area treatment plants. Those are available. Even the movement had discussed this with the government of Madhya Pradesh. Many alternatives had come up. So I will not be able to throw light on the specific that you mentioned, but this has been there all along the movement, several alternatives. In fact, in Saurashtra and Kutch, where the waters of this particular project were supposed to reach, 121 decentralized small irrigation and water projects were sanctioned by the government but couldn't come up because there were no funds available, because most of the funds were diverted to this one mega dam. So those couldn't come up. So there were sustainable and smaller decentralized alternatives with the government already sanctioned but couldn't come up because of lack of funds. So there were several alternatives that have been proposed.
Any other question?
Ma'am, can I ask a question?
Students?
Yes, please.
Yeah, please.
I don't know my question would be valid or not, but I just wanted to ask, in a case where three states are involved for the construction of a dam, when people, hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Sorry, ma'am. When there is construction of dam in which three individual states are involved, and people they suppress the construction of these dams, how do the government which are working individually at the state react to the people when they try to suppress the construction of dam at individual level?
Will you ask again? I got a little distracted. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. How, when the people are displaced in three states, so
Yes, ma'am. And people are displaced in three states basically, and they try to suppress the construction of the dam. How do the governments that are working in all these states individually react to the people suppression?
very, very nice question. Actually, most of the times we have seen that whether it is the left wing, right wing, or centrist, all as far as development projects are concerned, their ideology is the same. So no matter which government, they all push this kind of developmental projects. So there's not much difference. But often, yeah, like for example, in the case of Sardasur project, the work on the dam got delayed for several years because of the dispute between Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat. And therefore, the Narmada Water Dispute Tribunal had to be set up. But then finally, the political considerations come in. There are push and pull, and they fall in line because the core ideology of any political party till now, whichever party it is to have this kind of mega projects, So while Madhya Pradesh government may oppose the dam in Gujarat, it goes ahead with such large dams in its own state. So the issue of political parties and governments is very tricky. People have to fight no matter which government is in power. Sometimes it helps if the government of two states are at loggerheads, but those are short term gains. Long term, it will have to be people's power and resistance which really makes a difference. Did I answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. It was such a informative webinar. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank
నిన్న ఎడుతుంది అనుకుని నిన్న మండే లేదా ట్యూస్డే అరేంజ్ பண்ணது క్లాస్ எவ்வளோ கலெக்ட் பண்ணா அது அனுப்புங்க.
Any more questions?
அவ்வளோக்கா கலெக்ட் பண்ணல சுத்தமாக.
10 20 ஆனால் 20 ஆனால் பரவாயில்ல.
Hello.
நிన్న அவங்க கிளாஸ் அரேஞ்ச் பண்ணது அதுதான்
மண்டே வந்து பண்ணிக்கலாமே.
Hello.
லேட்டாக இந்த வீக் கூட பண்ண சொல்லியிருக்கோம்.
Any questions? Any other questions?
நீ கலெக்ட் பண்ணிட்டு
Masscom students?
ஸோ எல்லா ஒர்க்கும் நேற்று இருந்ததுன்னா ஸோ
அட்லீஸ்ட் 10-20 ஆவது கலெக்ட் பண்ணுவோம். அவங்களுக்கு ஃபோன் பண்ணி சொல்லிட்டு
Any questions in chat box, Mahesh? Are there any questions?
No, ma'am. No.
Ma'am, once again, thank you very much. Can you please conclude by suggesting what's your future course of action now? It's really good analysis. How do you think we should proceed further?
I feel that a very urgent need is for us to not start new constructions of these mega dams. Instead, re-examine all these projects and see whether they are really giving the benefits they set out to. You know, white paper on dams is required across the country. More push for alternatives is required. We must start by we have the Aadhaar card and the PAN card and ration card. I think we need to start counting the number of people displaced. Where are they? Have they been rehabilitated? Giving them a card, seeing that they get justice before continuing to displace more and more people. You know, so I think we need to do some of these things on a very urgent basis. And in the meantime, have a push for alternative development. We will have to conserve soil also, not just water. Go for decentralized projects, but halt large dams, large projects, identify the people displaced, and start working on sustainable alternatives. This should be the way ahead, I feel.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I would like to add one point that they need to do, when they're doing cost benefit analysis, they have to internalize environmental and social cost.
Yes.
Yeah, I would request the university people also, maybe Amrita University itself with the various campuses can also initiate such research projects. No, I think that will be a good idea to have real credible data, both for and against on these aspects.
True.
Really great. Thank you very much once again, Nandini madam.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
If there are no questions, then we can conclude and.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, then Mahesh.
No question.
Yeah.
Good evening all. On behalf of Envy Center, Amrita Vishwavidyapetham, Coimbatore, I would like to thank our guest speaker, Nandini ma'am, for delivering the wonderful presentation. As a former activist of Narmada Bachao Andolan and her work based on oral history of the struggle against Sardar Sarovar project, she shared her experiences on the social and environmental impacts and conflicts of our development projects. Once again, thank you ma'am for enlightening us with your knowledge. Also, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Dr. Maya Mahajan for the support and guidance. Also, I extend my thanks to all the participants who attended this webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure interacting with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nandini.